Love him or loathe him, Kevin Smith is one of the most interesting directors in the current film landscape. Why? Because his films are absolute marmite. You either love them or hate them. He's a director who is iconic in the independent film world with his 1994 debut Clerks, which has since been inducted into the US Library of Congress National Film Registry as being culturally significant. But Smith is also known for, let's say, flops, such as the widely maligned Tusk and Yoga Hosers. The director's fanbase absolutely loyal, and like me, will consume any and all Kevin Smith content, but his critics will avoid absolutely anything to do with him.
Goddamn yoga hosers.
However, an argument still exists that Smith may actually be an auteur director. So what does that mean? The question of auteur theory is one that refers to an idea that first emerged in the 1950s with the publication of the French magazine Herein du Cinema, before Andrew Sarris coined the term itself in 1962. The theory aims to establish the origin of a film's creative vision, usually the director. Sarris outlined the core concepts of auteur theory by stating that auteur directors contain the pursuit of distinctive themes or issues across a body of work, and the presence of distinctive traits act as the director's signature. While it acknowledges the fact that films can be a collaborative effort, the theory believes that films can be studied like artwork to portray a director's personality, beliefs, worldview, and other such factors. This is a theory that can be applied to Kevin Smith's work, and by comparing his first and latest films Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, I will aim to prove that whether you like him or not, Kevin Smith is undoubtedly a true auteur. The works of auteur directors have been described as modes in which the artist could express his or her thoughts, using the camera to write a worldview, a philosophy of life. This concept is especially clear in Clerks. The film, funded by Smith himself after selling his comic collection and including a cast of his friends, is a self-expression of Smith's time working as a convenience store clerk in the very store in which it is filmed. Not only this, but the film is structured through various segments, as if an anthology of sorts, based on the 14th century work Dante's Inferno, even going as far to name the main character Dante. This inspiration comes from Smith's Catholic upbringing, which he would reject later in life. This worldview is therefore present in not just the narrative of the film, but the structure too. Clerks is a blatant example of a film that comes directly from the director's vision. The story itself is based entirely on Smith's life experiences.
You know, there's a million fine-looking women in the world, dude, but they don't all bring you lasagna at work. Most of them just cheat on you.
He wrote, funded, directed, and edited the film. He used his friends as cast, and even played the iconic role of Silent Bob. This can all be used as evidence to help define Clerks as an auteur film. But is Kevin Smith an auteur director? If we were to take this sole example, there would be more evidence to suggest that this is the case. It is stated that auteur directors would leave traces of submerged personality in their work, and never is this clearer than in this film.
What did you like better, Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back?
Empire.
Blasphemy.
To make an original story based on real-life events and experiences, then shroud this in absurd comedy and pop culture references, this most definitely displays many traces of his personality. This is not isolated to Clerks, as many of Smith's films, especially those of the View Askew Universe series, all contain these same factors of worldview and an insight into personality. Take 1997's Chasing Amy for example. This is a story entirely based on an event that happened to people Smith knew in real life. Despite this being one of my favourite Kevin Smith films, many criticise the film as being unrealistic, even though it is based on true events. This comes back to the same sense of worldview that Clerks had, in Smith expressing his own thoughts and feelings based on life experiences in the medium of film. There is little to suggest that Clerks cannot be categorised as an auteur piece of cinema, as, even though the technical skill on this independent film is at times rough and amateurish, the decision to film in black and white creates what is referred to as camera stealer. This is a term that describes a particular look that a director creates for their films. Though Smith has never made another black and white film, albeit the opening of Clerks 2, Clerks is now synonymous with this look and is remembered as one of the key features of the film, to the point where many pieces of merchandise are produced in grayscale. This artistic decision, which was originally so they wouldn't have to worry about colour correction, really gives the film an element of camera stilo and secures its place as an auteur piece.
And you know, the reason is people think it's a creative choice. It was because there was no money, right?
That's right. Like,
I always have to say that because I don't want everyone thinking like, oh, he did it was creative and stuff.
you bet I was a real artist.
Yeah.
People, when they reviewed the movie, there was some critic a long time ago who said, like, it's almost as if, because it's black and white, the movie was shot from the perspective of the store security camera. And then every interview I did after that, I'd be like, we shot it in black and white because we wanted it to seem like it was shot from the store security camera.
Before discussing 2019's Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, it is worth delving deeper into the aforementioned View Askew universe, for people that are unfamiliar with it. This name refers to the series of films made by Smith between 1994 and 2019, which all share the same cinematic universe, with its name taken from Smith's View Askew production company. These films are Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, Jane Silent Bob Strike Back, Clerks 2, and Jane Silent Bob Reboot, as well as the upcoming Twilight of the Mallrats and Clerks 3. This can be seen as an important detail for examining whether Kevin Smith can be seen as an auteur director, as it relates to something Steger said. Auteur directors are involved in canon formation, that is, their films are often chosen to be reworked or alluded to. This is very prevalent in these films, which create their own canon, contain recurring themes and jokes, and include many returning characters, such as Jane Silent Bob, originally seen in Clerks and featured in all 7 films, Brody, originally seen in Mallrats and featured in 3 films, and Holden, originally seen in Chasing Amy and featured in 3 films. The ideas are reworked and alluded to countless times, with many references and visual cues that reappear throughout the films. These references are epitomised in Jane Silent Bob Reboot, as will now be explored. Kevin Smith's latest film is one that relies so heavily on this concept of canon formation that it is unlikely to be enjoyed by those unfamiliar with the rest of the Viewers universe. But as a fan of Smith's work, this is my favourite of his films, as it feels as though it was made specifically for me.
I'm Jay, and this is my hetero life mate, Silent Bob!
I understand and enjoy every reference, no matter how subtle or obvious. This film brings together long-running jokes, recurring themes, familiar characters, and narrative loose ends from various previous films, and for me, does it so well that it stands as my favourite of all the Viewers universe. However, this is where the question of whether Smith is an auteur director can be questioned, as some theorists argue that movies should be judged by their own criteria and not by who made it. If one was to strip away Smith's name and all the context that goes with it from Jane Silent Bob Reboot, then it could not only be seen as an objectively bad film, but also devoid of any real sense or logic. Well, it would still make more sense than Yoga Hosers, but let's not discuss that one, even if it is a guilty pleasure of mine. It is only when you consider Smith's previous films and personal life that Reboot makes sense. A film that expresses how he has matured in his 25 years of filmmaking, and especially since his famous heart attack of 2018, which led him to dramatically change his life. Several references to Smith's veganism are contained within the film, for example.
This old fool just eggplanted me! I'm 47 and I have no idea what that means.
As Kevin Smith fans, audiences will understand many of the references and narrative themes, but without that knowledge it would be hard to judge his film as an auteur piece of cinema, due to its dependence on intertextuality. This concept of intertextuality clashes with auteur theory, as it is seen that a film cannot be viewed as a one-of-a-kind piece if it contains inspiration and references from other sources. This greatly complicates the matter, as Jane Silent Bob Reboot contains so much of it, and yet still contains aforementioned ideas of submerged personality and using the camera to write a worldview. There is a term that could be applied to explain Smith's direction, Auteur en scene, which merely means competent director, and I feel many film buffs out there would prefer this label rather than having to call Kevin Smith an auteur director. This is the idea that a director is equipped for their job, but does not make films that can be considered auteur. The relevancy of this would be arguable, however, as films like Clerks, Chasing Amy, and potentially even Dogma can be defined as auteur due to these several supporting pieces of evidence. Though Jane Silent Bob Reboot may have conflicting technicalities in the auteur theory, there is still evidence to suggest that it is a piece of auteur cinema. Again, Smith wrote, directed, edited, and partly funded the film, as well as reprising his role of the titular Silent Bob, and even cameoing as himself in a hilarious final act. The film explores themes of maturity, his heart attack, and both he and counterpart Jason Mewes having become fathers. This last part provides what I think is the greatest scene of the film, as Chasing Amy character Holden McNeil returns to deliver a speech on becoming a father, and you can tell this is written straight from Smith's heart. Plus, we get this great reference to Batman vs Superman from Ben Affleck.
And that kid came along and suddenly you realize you're not Bruce Wayne anymore. You're Thomas Wayne, or Bruce Wayne's mom, whose name escapes me.
Personality and self-expression are what drive the story and inspire the references of Jane Silent Bob Reboot, adhering to these concepts and even that of canon formation, and yet the argument of intertextuality contradicts this. Nairmore described films as collaborative media, but their modes of production are hierarchical, and this is evident here. The film contains input from its cast and crew, again featuring many of Smith's friends who also worked on previous films including Clerks, but also featuring A-list names such as Chris Hemsworth, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. But with Smith's name across so much of his creative process, it is clear to see who is the driving creative force. Though there is conflicting evidence, I believe there is more to suggest that Smith is an auteur director, whether you like it or not. Though some may see the reliance on intertextuality as a way to disqualify him from this title, Sarris's original idea of recurring themes across a body of work would prove otherwise. The Viewers universe, including both Clerks and Jane Silent Bob Reboot, can therefore help define Kevin Smith as a true auteur director.
because the director of this impending abortion of cinema is none other than Kevin fucking Smith.
Who? But that brings us to the end. After the amazing Real Rejects recently gave me a shout out on their channel, I thought I should get posting more, so I have a few videos lined up before the end of the year. But until then, thank you for watching, if indeed you still are. I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. Being the Collector, this has been the Den of Antiquities, and I'll see you next time.
My love for you is like a truck berserker. Would you like some making fuck berserker?
That's fucking funny, man.
Did he say making fuck?